All right, so looking at School Interface 3. School Interface 3 is all about adding students to our list of students, and then saving the data, and then being able to delete records as well. So sorry, I'm trying to open up my terminal and the Zoom menu keeps on opening up instead. There we go. School Interface 3. All right, so first off, we need to change our runner file. So we need to say, we need to have option 3, which is add a student. So we can say elif mode equals 3. We can take a look at what it says on the README. So we're going to say school.addStudent, which doesn't exist yet. And it's going to take student data as an argument. And we have this, they have this code here for us on how we can do that. So just creating a dictionary called student data, which starts with role being student. And then you add key value pairs with input. So name, age, school ID, and password. So I'm just going to copy all this code here. Oops, wrong place. There we go. And then I'm going to just cut that, put that there. All right. Any questions about how this part will work? Seems pretty straightforward. Also, I should have asked earlier, can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so we've got that runner part working. And it says, you know, that's pretty crowded and we'll refactor it in School Interface 4. So now we need to create, add an add student method to our school class. And it says we need to create a new instance of a student object and add it to the self.students variable. Okay, so we go to school. Let's make our method. So add student, take self and student data. We can just say self.students.append. And how do we create a new instance of the student class using that student data? Because we don't want to just add the student data because that's a dictionary. So how can we make a new student out of a dictionary?
Double asterisk in front of it.
Yep, we can use kwargs. So we create a new student instance, **, student data. And for now, that's all we have to do. So I'm going to run the runner file. Let's add a student. Student's name is Ferris. Student age is 18. School ID 123 student password is save Ferris. And if we list all students, there's Ferris at the bottom.
Hey, no, I had a quick question about that.
Yeah.
So when you do the kwargs, the keyword arguments, if something comes in from the CSV file, like another column, or a column is not in your CSV file rather, and you have an argument in your instance, your init method for the student, then it'll throw an error, I think. That's what we were trying to do last night. So what's the best way around that? Like if you want to add more properties and it's coming in from a CSV file and you need to add like like some other attribute. You know what I mean?
Yeah, good question. So you're saying like you want to make a class that'll just take anything it gets from a CSV file as a keyword?
Well, yeah. So anything that it gets from the CSV file, but also say you have like you have an account number that wasn't in the owner's CSV sheet, you know,
Mhm.
and you want to also have that account number, be able to add that in as well.
Yeah.
Would you have to
So
create a separate method or?
so one thing you could do is you could change. I'm going to write like an alternative init method down here. Is you could take self and args as an argument, and so I'd say self dot args equals args, and then when we created a new student, what you could do, and I don't know if this is considered good practice in Python. It's good practice in Ruby, but not in Python. I'm not sure if it's good practice in Python. I could say a student and then pass in a hash. So, with name and age and password and all of that. And so essentially when you say, I'm telling my class to expect a dictionary as an argument, and it doesn't care what keys the dictionary has, it'll just have args, or whatever you want to call it, would just be a dictionary with whatever keys it's got. Does that make sense?
I think so. So the double init method, it's still you can have two init methods and it's only gonna make one object.
No, you can only have one init method. I was
Okay.
just like showing what that would look like.
I see.
Yeah, you still need just one init method. I just didn't want to rewrite this whole thing. All right. Any other questions? All right, so now we need to save the data. So yeah, if I run the program again real quick, list all students, Ferris is no longer there. So we need to make sure that when we add a student, it gets saved to the CSV file. So in other words, we need to make sure that our data persists. And it tells us here, so we need to complete the add student method so that it loops through all our student objects in self.students and saves them to the CSV file. And it mentions here that, so we could just append the new value to the CSV file, but that gets a little tricky when we want to get to deleting rows, because we want to make sure that if we delete, the first value or a middle value, that it's all, that it doesn't, so that we can't just append something, then we need to rewrite everything. So I'm going to write a method here called save. And save's only job is going to be to loop through self.students and write all of them to our CSV file. So let's see here. Do I already have? Yep. So I need to make sure I'm importing OS and CSV. And then I'll need to create, do the path stuff. So my path equals os.path.abspath, os.path.dir name is under file. And then path equals os.path.join with my path and /data/students.csv. And then we'll say with open, we're going to open with path, and we want to be in write mode for this, as we'll call the CSV file. We'll call this student CSV equals, so the question is, all right, should we use a dictionary writer or a regular writer? What did y'all do?
Sorry, I have a question, Noah.
Yeah.
What does the import OS and then doing os.path and all that do?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What does the my path and importing OS and os path do?
Oh, Yeah. So when we use the CSV with open thing, it needs to know how to get to the particular CSV file, which in this case is students.csv. And essentially, kind of because of some quirks of how it works, we can't just say go to students.csv. So using the OS library, we first figure out where we are by using os.path.abspath, which essentially says my path is essentially a long way of saying get us here. And then path is saying, okay, join my path, and then go up a level, go to the data folder, and go to students.csv. So these two lines are a long way of saying go to this file. Whoops, this file. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Is it because if you use a runner file, it won't be able to just go to the path?
Yeah, I think it's part of it is just with the way the CSV library works is you can't just say, I can't just say .. /data /students.csv. I don't think it'll work if I do it this way. It requires a more like, it essentially needs the entire path all the way from the root of my file system all the way down to where it's going.
We were able to get it to work by just putting the path in there.
Really?
But we only ran it from school. We didn't, I don't think we got to like writing a whole runner file.
Okay. All right, so, well, we can try this. So is this how you did it?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that will work. Let's try it out. And if not, I know it's part of it is like the difference between absolute path and relative path. And I'm not really sure off the top of my head what the advantages and disadvantages are of using a relative path versus an absolute path. So I know absolute path is a little better if you're expecting that things may move into different folders, because it'll just say this is where it is, period, as opposed to relative path, which is if this file changes location, then it'll be something, it'll stop working. We'd have to change that. So, all right, so I'm going to try just using the CSV writer here, the regular one, and take CSV file. I'm going to give it a delimiter of commas, so make sure everything is separated by commas. And then we'll say, first we're going to write out student CSV dot write row. And this first one will just be our headers, so name, age, role, school ID, and password. And then we can loop through student. So it's for student in self.students. Student CSV.write row. And we'll pass it in student.name, student.age, student.role, student.school ID, and student.password. And let's try it out by running the runner file. Add a student. Let's call this one Cameron. Cameron is 18. And if I list all students, there he is. And then if I boot the file up again and list all students, uh-oh, I didn't actually invoke the method. That's my fault. Because if I want this to work, I actually need to use it. So I'm just going to say, after I append a student in my add student method, I will self.save. Try it one more time. Add a student, Cameron, 18. Uh-oh. All right, it says file not found, no such file or directory, .. /data /students.csv. So it didn't like that. So let's try doing it with path instead. So it looks like it looked for a file that was actually called .. /data /students.csv instead of following the path. So maybe if I didn't put it as a string, that would work better. But in the meantime, I'm going to try this one more time. There he is. And if I run it again, list all students, there's Cameron. All right, what questions do you have about the save method? Okay, so we have one more thing to do, which is deleting records. So we need to be able to delete a student record. We're following the same procedure as before. And we need to say what information will we need from the user in order to delete a record. So let's take a look at our runner. Let's make mode equal 4. All right, so what information can we use in order to find out which student should be deleted? We take a look at our student.csv here.
You would use school ID.
Yeah, school ID makes sense here because it's definitely possible to have 2 students named Cameron or 2 students named Kim or 2 students named Lisa, but we would want to ensure that all of our students have unique student IDs. So we can say, oh, wrong place, student ID equals input, enter student ID, student school ID. And then we would, oh, there we go. And then I would say school.delete student and pass it in that student ID. So let's write our delete student method. All right, so in our delete student method, what's our first task before we can delete the student?
You have to find the student.
Yeah, we have to find the student. And luckily for us, we have a method that already does that, right? Find student by ID. So we could say student equals self.find student by ID, passing it in the student ID. And then we could say self.students.remove that student. And then once we do that, all we have to do is save, right? Any questions about how this about this solution to that? Let's try it out. So first I'm going to list all my students. Let's get rid of Jesse. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 5. So I want to remove a student. All right, no errors. If I look at it, there's no Jesse. And then if I run it again, Jesse still isn't there. All right, what questions do you have about School Interface 3?
I think I missed it, Noah, but the dict. Why did you choose to use the dict writer instead, or just the regular writer instead of the dict writer again in this case?
Honestly, it was just on a whim.
Okay.
The dict writer could work just as well. I would just need to make sure that if I did, I would have to say,
Do the
Yeah.
headers and everything.
yeah, I need the, what are they called? There's like a specific word for it. I forget what it's called now. If I did dict writer,
Oh, field name.
field
names.
names.
Yeah.
So I'd say field names equal, and I would say field names equals, and then we can just copy this. And then when we did the right row, field names equals field names. And then the right row, when you have the field, with that would be, so I think you'd have to do name, student.name, age, student.age, role, student.role, school ID, student.school ID, and password, student.password. So this works just as well. So if I run it again, let's add a student, Ferris. Ferris is 18. And look at students.csv. There he is. So to some extent, it's a matter of preference, whether you use a regular writer or a dictionary writer. The dictionary writer can be good because it is more exact. Because instead of just passing in an array, you're passing in an object and making sure that each object corresponds to a certain key. Any other questions about School Interface 3?
So did you import just OS or os.path?
I just imported OS and CSV. You can also import os.path.
What's the difference?
You know, I'm not super sure.
Okay.
I think it's kind of a matter of, it's kind of like saying, okay, I'm going to be using os.path as a method here. And it's kind of the difference between saying I am importing os.path as a whole, or I'm importing OS and then using os.path. It kind of shakes out to the same thing. I think the difference here is that by doing it this way, I can't use any other OS methods. I can only use os.path. And that's okay here because I don't need any other OS methods because that's the only one I'm using. But if I wanted to use other OS methods, then I would need to just import OS. All right, any other questions? Okay. In that case, let's take a 5-minute break, be back here at 9 sharp, and we will start our workshop.